Today's guest is Peter Anthony. Peter is an author, television producer, and former image consultant for CBS News. Peter has appeared on radio shows and television shows both nationally and internationally. Peter's near-death experience provided unexplained mathematical equations while he was on the other side, and today we are going to find out more about that near-death experience. So, Peter, thank you so much for giving me a little bit of time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And what I'd like to say to you, Jeff, from one Texan to another, since you're living there, actually, you're my first Texas interview. Awesome. And I know you have an audience all over, but I really appreciate this. And I have traveled everywhere, but this is an honor for me to come in from to be a part of the show and be a Texan and doing a show for Texas. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And if I would have known this, I would have sent you a cowboy hat a week ago. So you'd be prepared for this.
I would have. Thank you so very much.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's jump right into it. My audience loves to hear about NDEs. So what happened in yours?
Well, mine starts basically with the misdiagnosis in a doctor's office. At the time, I was working for CBS News Division and keeping a very busy schedule. I went in and they diagnosed me as having a stomach ulcer, giving me Tagamet. Mm-hmm. And this was during towards the tail end of the AIDS epidemic. And I began to lose weight considerably throughout the summer. I went in June 4th, 1987. Wow. And throughout the summer, I began to drop, 10 pounds, 15 pounds. I'd gotten so thin, and CBS being a very conservative news organization, I was stuffing my suits with newspaper and Kleenex. And putting makeup on my face because I began to get these brown lesions on my face. I didn't know at the time that I had tuberculosis. I didn't know at the time that I had Crohn's disease. They were treating me for a stomach ulcer. So taking responsibility for my part, I did not go into the doctor's offices as I should have because I was traveling. And by the time I got into November, we were wrapping up on a tribute to one of our actresses on CBS morning show. And I went to a birthday party for myself where another person was throwing me a party. And I think it was somewhere between the cake and the booze. I could feel myself just going. And but I had been bleeding all throughout the summer and I just wasn't taking care of myself. Went into the bathroom and the perfect storm took over. A friend rushed me to the hospital. I went home actually before we went to the hospital, changed out of my suit and tie and put on some thrift clothes, which is probably the worst thing to do. And when we got to the hospital, they thought I was homeless. And I had left all my information there at the condo. So the check-in procedure was really wrought with just so much. Anything that could have gone wrong did. So 5, 4, 3 to the punch here. They wouldn't check me in because they thought I was homeless. I didn't have my insurance information with me. And if it hadn't been for a friend, just screaming and demanding that they check me in, I don't know that would have happened. I'm sure at that time, back during the late 80s, so many AIDS patients were being left to die in the alleyways and the hallways. Kind of similar to what's going on now. There was so much fear and pandemonium going on with that, and they just assumed that I was had the AIDS with the tail end of the AIDS virus, and I was dying and coming to the hospital, and they didn't want to check me in. So I remember the nurse finally showed up and was reeling me down towards ER, and he freaked out. He was suited up like I was radioactive. And he looked down at me and I could see his perspiration, on his forehead. I couldn't see his eyes, just his forehead. And he pushed me into the hallway and just kind of left me there. Wow. And so I don't know how long I was there. It must have been 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I was just bending over in pain. Didn't know I had a perforated viscus. I had basically had the intestinal tract was erupting inside, and I was bleeding internally as well as bleeding externally. Mm-hmm. So by the time they got me into the ER, I mean, I was a goner. I'd been bleeding all summer. I dropped down to, I think at that time I was down to 110 pounds. And by the time I got into the ER, I mean, they didn't want to check me in. They didn't want me to go in the OR. If it hadn't been for Nurse Betty Sullivan, I don't know what would have happened, but she made sure that I got into the OR. By the time I got into the OR, again, I had lost so much blood. They couldn't keep the IVs in my arms, and because they kept collapsing. And so I remember when I got into onto the operating table, I couldn't tell you what happened at that moment. I was kind of in and out of consciousness, but I began to see a rotating tunnel over a digital clock. And I remember him saying, we need to get him hooked up to the IVs because, we're losing him. And so I think they had me turn over on my side. And I guess, Jeff, at that time, it was like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I remember seeing a snap, and I could feel something attached to my solar plexus. And it almost like just attached itself, and I could see this rotating tunnel spinning around. But at the same time, Peter Anthony was hovering over Peter Anthony in physical form. And I could see myself looking down, on the operating table and seeing them go to medical protocol. At the same time, I guess the spirit part of me, or the essence part of me, was being, vacuumed into this tunnel. So at this time, I began to see familiar faces, I remember looking at the clock. It was a big clock. I remember it was 11:11, and it was just bizarre because this was November the 11th. I was in operating room number 11, and I was clinically dead at 11:11 in operating room 11 on November the 11th. So when I began to spin through the tunnel, I think one of the most fascinating things, and so many of us who've gone through the tunnels, we all have our stories to share, but I began to see mathematical equations, quantum physics. Now, I'm an artist, or was an artist, and all these equations were foreign to me. But at the time, it was making sense. Part of what I was seeing were the triple codes: 222, 333, 444, 999, 888. Again, looking back at that moment in time, after I recovered from my near-death experience, it didn't make sense. Then it did. But I also was seeing mathematical codes. And part of that, it was like I was being downloaded with information. The other thing was that the sound that I was experiencing was just beyond anything that I had experienced, especially being in the film industry. And the colors were just, there were colors that I couldn't even explain, colors I'd never seen before. And so imagine going through this tunnel as you're spinning through, and you're just going through this tunnel, and mathematical equations of being downloaded into your consciousness. But the thing that I found most interesting, and many people have asked me about this, was collective intelligence. I not only downloaded the mathematical equations, but imagine reading the Bible in less than 3 seconds and downloading it in your consciousness in spirit form, and you getting every bit of it. The same thing happened with, everything I was taught in school. From 0 to 60, so much information was coming into my intelligence. I call it the collective intelligence, and I got every bit of it. So for me, it was looking back at it, even to this day, when people come over, they see me. To this day, I cannot get enough information. I can read 2 or 3 newspapers and emails, and working on a script and working on my conclusion with the next book, listening to my headphones, listening to music, and I'm just constantly, it looks like I'm on some kind of drug, but I'm just all over the place, but it all makes sense to me. So to this day, because of that going the other side, I cannot get enough information. As I went into my, what we call the life review, I think for me, and like so many of us who've had the life review, when you go through this tunnel, the first thing, and it's an overriding theme for many of us who've had near-death experiences, you feel this sense of peace. You feel this sense of calm. You feel this sense of love, like you've never experienced love before. I kind of tell people, imagine the love you have for your dog or your cat or your wife or your child, and multiply that 10 times 1 million. The love that you feel during this tunnel is it doesn't compare to anything that you experience, while you're here in this physical form. So that sense of peace and love and calm and stillness, and it's not like you're questioning what you're doing and why you're seeing mathematical codes and why you're seeing these colors and these sounds that they're unexplainable. You're not going into logical, understanding of what's happening as much as you're accepting. It's real important when you're going through this tunnel. You don't question it. You just accept it as though I'm having a conversation with you, and we go to the next level of conversation, and there it is. So when I got to my life review, and so many of us who do have these life reviews, not many, there are many who do not, but many of us do. Again, your life goes 0 to 60. And every minute of your life, which I think is very important, everything that you do is based upon choice. Every moment you had in life, from the time that you were even a child, as an adult, I think what I learned from all this in this particular time of my life is that there's no such thing as a victim.
Excuse me.
You are the person that's made the choices. So when you've made those choices, you have to kind of fess up. If you have done something that you don't feel comfortable with. I think for me, having seen what I call the matrix on the other side, I'm very aware of that when I do something. An example, like having a conversation. Well, I mentioned to you I was hacked, and dealing with American Express and the different accounts. And some people are really great, other people aren't. And you kind of lose that sense of patience, and you're having that kind of heated conversation when you're stressed out. And I go back to that moment, like, okay, now this is not serving you. So get into a state of centeredness, and then get on to this conversation. So as I said, I'm well aware that every choice I make at this time in my life, living now, is based upon a choice. And that's what I learned on the other side. So I think, as I said, for me, the most important thing that I could share with your audience is that everything you do, every relationship, every job that you have, if you decide to go to school or not go to school, to take that drink, if you're a drug addict or an alcoholic or not, or that drug, that's entirely your choice. We are given a choice. And so I kind of come back with this theory of, everything I do on this planet not only is based upon my choice, but also is based upon what can I do today that makes my day better. So getting to the other side in my life review, 0 to 60, as I mentioned before, I saw my life from the time I was born, in the hospital, and I saw myself die in the hospital at 11:11 p.m. on November the 11th. Everything that we do, every moment, the conversations, the people that you've forgotten about, going to a park and sitting there and reading a book, seeing that part of your life that you've just completely forgotten about, those relationships that you had. I remember seeing a young boy that I played with. His name was David. I didn't know. I had completely forgotten, but there he was, my third grade teacher. I mean, everything was my movie. And when you understand that it's your movie, and that you are the star in this movie, and everything around you is basically the extras, sometimes the guest stars, sometimes the co-stars, and sometimes the main star. This is all a part of the equation of our life. And I got a chance to see it. And so, as I said, I saw some things that I must say that, I've said so many times on these interviews. It's not that I murdered somebody. It's not that I robbed a bank. But I did get a chance to see some things, what I call human error, where I didn't shine. And I saw myself where I could have done things a little bit better. So for me, that was real important.
All right. I have a lot of questions. I can pick apart and ask all kinds of things about your NDE. So are you ready?
Yes.
First thing I find is interesting is you keep seeing all these repeated numbers. I recently did a podcast with somebody who said that repeating numbers have to do with angels, especially because
Yes.
She was charging something. She said it was $11.11. And I said, well, what's up with 1111? And she said, well, those are numbers of angels. And you said you 11, 11, 11 for you, and then you keep seeing these repeated numbers 222, 888, and stuff like that. So while you were in your NDE, did you see any angels?
I write about this in my book, Keymaster. When I got into my life review, I was greeted by by what I refer to as an ascended master. Many people said that I was speaking to Jesus Christ. I can't say that I did, because it's not like he said, "Hey, I'm Jesus, and how are you doing, Peter?"
Mm-hmm.
So there never was an introduction that I'm Jesus. And also, when you're having this conversation with this ascended master, you're communicating telepathically. And the other thing that makes it most interesting, you're not in physical form. So this is consciousness to consciousness having conversations. The same thing when I was spinning through the tunnel, seeing these 11s and the 8s and the 2s and all the triple codes. And as I said, quantum physics, and getting it, so back to angels. So when I was sitting on this branch and looking at my stratosphere of my life review, over here to the side was this male energy who I referred to as an angel. Now, I want to back up. I was agnostic, was a former Catholic. My whole world was based upon you live, you work, you make money, you get married, you have kids, you get the house, the picket fence, the car. That's your life. So I really wasn't into anything spiritual and metaphysical. And so for me, coming in as a doubting Thomas and having this conversation with an ascended master, and the only reason why I say ascended master is I don't know what else to call it. But whoever it was an advanced being and was communicating with me and allowing me to see, again, my life review. And the reason why I say angel is because throughout my lifetime, after my near-death experience, I've had encounters with Nordic angels. Nordic angels are the tall, 6'8", blonde, blue-eyed, or white hair, blue-eyed angels. And when you're having these encounters, everything kind of comes to a pause in your life. And it took me a while to understand that you were having these conversations with these, I call them, again, advanced beings, usually at critical times in my life. Points of I shouldn't go to New York on September the 11th, on Tuesday, having this conversation in Tulum with this ascended master or angel, almost drowning in Laguna, and having this conversation with someone else. So they were always, it seems like, forewarnings, and these angels would show up and I would, not they said you can't do this, but it seemed like the moment of time, again, going back to that choice, if I gone in and 1 minute later or 1 minute earlier, there again, I would have had, another death. So I call these exit points, and these exit points that I were experiencing were being guided by angels. So yes, I, looking back at all this, even having this experience on the other side with an ascended master who I call my angel, I'm, people ask me, do you believe in God now? I do. Do you believe in angels? I do. But not in the sense that everyone else believes in. I believe in a very, if the God that I experienced on the other side and the angels that I've experienced in this particular physical realm, everything is based upon energy.
Right.
Just like an example, like you walk into a room and you just sense before you even have a conversation with someone, I shouldn't be here. And there's an energy in the room that kind of is persuading you to leave. So that's how I've had these moments of aha, of just everything based upon energy. So you learn, as I have, you kind of trust that inner voice and let it guide you to wherever you need to be. And sometimes you're not making the right choice. And for me, sometimes these angels would come in and say, maybe not now. My view of life and death is really simple. We have a start date and we have an expiration date. Everything in between is what you do with your life.
Right. All right. You said something there, and I can't let this go by. Two things. One, I'll let you answer all this. One is I want to know, how do you actually communicate with angels? But more importantly, I thought you said an angel told you don't go to New York on 9/11. Is that true? Did I catch that right?
It's not that he said don't go to New York. He said, I think there are other areas in your life that need more attention. It's always this very rhythmic conversation that you have. Many people, an example, here's a good, I was in Mexico, in Cancun, walking across the street with friends. We were, having a good time on a Sunday afternoon, wasn't paying attention. I crossed the street and everything slowed down, and there was this bus approaching. and this hand reached out and grabbed me and pulled me back. And everything went into this, again, I call it pause mode, like, like slow motion, on your video camera. And I looked around once again, was this, white-haired, blue-eyed, tall, this time it was a woman walking past and turned around and smiled at me. But I could hear her saying in my mind, "It's not your time." So, I've been guided by these moments. And I think for me, as far as going back, how you communicate with how you communicate with your angels, for me, I go to the mountains. I go into hospitals. I go into libraries. I go to beaches. There's a thing called the thin veil. And the thin veil is where land meets water, where land meets sky. And if you do it early in the morning or late in the evening at sunrise or sunset, and if you're in an altered state, meaning you're in a place of peace and gratitude, not asking for money, not asking for rent, not asking for food, not asking for the job or whatever, you're just there to give, grace to all the great things that have happened in your life. Once you get into that state of gratefulness, or what I call complete gratitude, and not in all cases, but sometimes they show up. And sometimes you're sitting there having a conversation with this, angel, and you don't realize this angel until they pass, because everything just kind of, the only thing that to me that I can look back at are those piercing blue eyes that you experience, and that presence of peace, which I experienced on the other side when I was going through the tunnel. And everything, as I said, just kind of goes into pause mode, and you get into that complete centeredness of nothing matters more than this conversation that I'm having with this person. And again, you're not saying to yourself, this is an angel and he's talking to me and I need to pay attention, as much as you're in the conversation and listening and understanding. I don't know if that explains it any better, but it doesn't make sense to you until times goes back to normal. They walk away. Sometimes they kind of disappear into the horizon. Sometimes they just vanish into the alleyway. And you just know that whatever you want to call it, that you've had an encounter with something that's beyond your understanding. And I think for me, gosh, there have been so many. And as I said, there have been so many times in life that I should have checked out. I've had, falling off a mountain, head-on car collision, shark attacks, all these things that have happened to me. And always at that right moment, that I guess that angel just showed up at the right moment in my life. And as I said, in Mexico, it's not your time. So I pay attention to that. And so for those who are seeking your angels, for me, I start my day at 11:11. I go to the mountains. I go to a park. I go to a fish pond, and I just sit there and just have a conversation with, whoever happens to be around there. I don't go out seeking. I just go out and just enjoy. And I had something happen to me this last 6 months of shutdown. I didn't realize until after I went on a podcast in Australia, and that this woman I'd been speaking with for 6 months turned out to be an angel.
Wow.
She said she was homeless, and I don't like to watch the news. And so while I was doing sit-ups and doing chin-ups at the park, she would talk to me, and we just had this very simple conversation. And she had a little radio, and she was reading newspapers and stuff, and she'd talk to me about what was going on currently with politics. I said, her name was Barbara. I said, Barbara, I don't want to listen to all that. I don't like the negativity. I said, but I am going on a Zoom interview here for the next 6 months. So I need to kind of get up on my news, right? So she, for 6 months, every day at the park where I worked out, she always showed up. She had a little radio on, and she read me the LA Times, the Huffington Post, Politico. She wrote things down, and she would have this conversation with me about current events. So when I went on these different radio shows, I used Barbara's information that she'd given me. And then my last day at the park, again, this is interesting. I'd seen her for 6 months, and the last day, she wasn't in her space of peace and calm. She said, I'm having some problems here. What's wrong, Barbara? She said, my best friend here is not doing well, and I've got to go to the shelter and take care of her. I said, shelter? And I said, what do you mean shelter? I said, well, the homeless shelter. And I was like, really? never in my mind did I even think about that this woman was homeless. I mean, she didn't look homeless. She didn't dress homeless. She never asked for money. And that's where she was going. She said, well, yeah, I have to go down the shelter, and that's where we're going to stay tonight. And I'm taking care of her, and she's not in a great space right now. And I was like, but what she said to me, and this is interesting, Jeff, thank you so much for talking to me for this last 6 months. You're the first person here at this park that has taken the opportunity to speak to me. She said, we're here on this planet to be kind, to be loving, and to give a helping hand. And you've done that. And thank you so much. And she walked away. And I've gone to that park, and it's been cold here. It's been raining, every day. I've never seen her. But I remember when she was walking away, we go back to that moment of calm, and go back to that moment where everything was in a pause mode. And as she's walking away, she turned around and looked at me, and she just waved and said goodbye. I got on my bike and I rode off, and I came back and she was gone. And I said to myself, he went on an interview with in New Zealand. I said, her name was Kirsty. I said, Kirsty, I just know I was talking to an angel. But I know it had to be because she's not been around. She never asked for money, but she had those piercing blue eyes and that white hair and that whole sense of calm. And she would sit next to me and talk and read. And again, many people don't believe, that it was an angel, but, I think it's a rather personal thing. And, in your own mind that something, if she wasn't an angel, she certainly was an earth angel. But, for me, it was fascinating. And the reason why I bring this up, go back to my near-death experience, we go back to choice. Our lady on the park bench talking to me, most people go, oh, she's a whack job. Don't take the time and bother talking to this lady. I mean, many people would do that. May not have the conversation the next time, or she's at the park bench. I'm going to go over here and exercise. But no, something, that little voice inside said to me, spend time with this woman and talk to her. And so my homework assignment from the universe, from the Ascended Masters, from God, if you will, was to spend time with this woman for 6 months, and for her to talk to me about the news events that were going on the planet. And she became my source of information. So my homework assignment was go on these different radio podcast interviews, talk about politics by not watching the news, but having my own little talking head. And the universe provided that for me. So I took the choice to be a part of that equation. So again, it goes back to, I could have said no, and who knows what would have happened. But I know in my heart, in my mind, she had to be something that was divine. I know in my heart that she was.
To me, that's a fantastic story.
But you want to know something that's interesting? I remember when I got back to my condo, it was 11:11. I looked at my clock on my microwave. I thought, oh my God, I looked at the clocks in my house. It was 11:11. I thought, thank you. It was just a sign. So for those who are seeing the triple codes, the 222, the 333, the 999, the 888, these are times in your life that you're being called upon to kind of check in and see where you are in life and to slow down. It's not about the job, not about the relation, not about the bad boss, not about the kids that are all, all cranky. It's about your time just to slow down for a moment and just give thanks for all the great things that are in your life at that moment. The more you do that, the more in tune you become with all the great things around you, the more you receive. And that's all I do every day. At 11:11, I basically make it a point to get out no matter what the weather is and go out, whether it's on my bike or a walk. And they call me Peter the Meter Greeter. So I go out and I want, especially during this shutdown, I want everyone to feel a sense of peace, a sense of normalcy. And the only way I could do that was to walk around and say, hey, how are you doing? Have a great day. Played my part, on a very small part, but you never know.
Now, you said that you downloaded the Bible while you were on your NDE.
Oh,
right?
That was just one example.
Oh, well, the reason I'm asking that is because, and since you made a reference to the Bible, did you see anything in your NDE that would be considered biblical?
Okay, so your audience is either going to thumbs up this or thumbs down.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah. I'm going to say this delicately, and here goes. I was born and raised Catholic. the first commandment was thou shalt have guilt for the rest of your life. Everything that I was taught as a Catholic, I have to say, was not correct. I'd have to say of maybe part of it was correct, but how we were taught, about God and Jesus and Mary and all the saints. And, I think these are stories, these are parables, these are prose that were given to us as examples for us to live by. I'm not doubting the teachings of Jesus the Christman or Buddha or the Avatar or the Native American Indians. I think these are great stories, and they are guiding points and rules for us to follow by. But for me, I think my greatest awakening was we have it about 10% right. And that includes all religion. It's a very simple formula you learn on the other side: love, kindness, and unity. That's where it all begins. We're here to give a helping hand. We're here to be love. We're here loving beings on this planet to help people. And I think anything past that or beyond that, where there's greed or there's corruption or there's anger or there's selfishness or there's, jealousy, anything that is not coming from that essence of love and kindness and giving a helping hand is the opposite of what I saw on the other side. So for me, an example, I'm a big animal advocate. I go around rescuing animals out of kill shelters. So it's hard for me coming back from the other side when you come back with all this love, I guess, a part of your new age diet. And so when someone does something cruel to a dog or to a cat or to a horse, or someone does something cruel to a child, my mind can't go there. My mind goes towards love, kindness, helping. And so, as I said, so if we're not, I think we'd come down to greed or gratitude. You come from a place of faith or fear. You come from a place of hate or love. It's kind of that simple. And I think for me, if it doesn't feel right in my heart, and we all get that aha. We know we're doing something we shouldn't be doing. An example, when I was talking to, when I got hacked, I was talking to a representative, and this lady I was speaking to could care less about what happened to me. She was short, she was curt, and our energies were, she was very irritated with me because I was being so patient and kind. And we were just, our energy was like oil and water. We just weren't connecting. And I found myself going down that path of her energy. And I said, just give me a second here. I had to disconnect from her and take a deep breath. And I thought, I don't want to go into that drama. I don't want to be into that moment of just anger towards this lady, because she obviously didn't like her job. And but anyway, the point being is that I think we all have those moments. And what I've learned on the other side, it's those moments when we're talking CVS or the cashier agent or the agent on the telephone, American Express, or the gas attendant. To me, those are those areas, or in traffic, at rush hour traffic in LA. If you're not coming from a place of kindness and patience and understanding during a 5 o'clock rush hour traffic, then you're not connected to a place of peace. So I think for me, it's real important that I try to stay as centered as possible. Am I there every day? No. But if I get off the beaten path, I know how to go back to that place of peace. And so I think we're tested all the time, day in, day out, again, with these challenges that we're being, forced to deal with. And it's not about them and our conversation as much as, how are you acting today, Peter? And then there are other times when things just flow, So I like to live in a life of flow. And for me, if things don't move effortlessly, then it's not a part of my pie. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's kind of common that I see in my podcast that when people come back from their NDEs, they have a feeling of homesick, a feeling of loneliness, like they wanted to go back. Did you have any of that?
Absolutely. You don't relate to the world that you come back to. That's it. Because you get a chance to see the real you. You get a chance to see the real planet. I mean, I can't tell you what I saw on the other side in terms of the destruction as we are a very angry planet. The way we treat our environment, the way we treat animals, the way we treat each other. And so you get a chance almost like you're the person in the auditorium watching all this, meaning planet Earth and what we're doing. I mean, I could see pharmaceutical companies, curing disease, but creating drugs that created 3 more diseases for the name of profit. I could see one of those things I saw was horrible. What men were doing to the horses in the Everglades. They were tired, they didn't want to take care of the horses, so they'd run them off to the Everglades and let the horses be eaten by the alligators. Mm-hmm. So when you're on the other side and experiencing this, what I can speak for myself was, this is not a part of the plan of God. It's a very simple operation here: love, kindness, compassion, again, unity. That's it. You can read the Bible, you can read the Quran, you can read anything you want, the Tibetan 10 Commandments, you can read the Native American parables, whatever it is that you want to read. It's a very simple formula. It's just, that's it. It's man that has complicated it. That's it. Mm-hmm. All for the what? The name of greed, corruption. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like, to me, this whole 2020 was a wake-up call for so many of us, because we got a chance to slow down, do our inventory. I think for a lot of us, it's like, what really matters? What really is important in my life right now? Because so much was taken away. For me, I go back to my near-earth experience, is because what was taken away from me were my legs. When I came back in recovery, because of the medications, I had complications from everything they'd give me, from the morphine to the high doses of prednisone. I lost my eyesight. I was in a wheelchair for a year. I was at 89 pounds for almost a year and a half. I was kind of like the elephant man. So for me, I get up at 11:11 every day, and I'm somewhere outside of my condo, in the mountains, at a park, at a fish pond, because for me, the most important thing is I can see and I can walk. I still have problems walking. And sometimes if I drive to LA back and forth, and I can be in the car for 3 or 4 hours, I can't get out of my car. My legs freeze up on me. I'm in so much pain. So I have to sit around and I have to basically force myself out of the car. And then sometimes my vision will come in and out. But you know what? I can see and I can walk. And when I'm having a great day, with my legs and my eyes, I'm grateful. It's simple. I think about this. I can see the mountains. I can see the sky. I can see the water. I can touch the fish. It's simple. And we spend so much time wanting the money and wanting the prestige and wanting the degrees. And those are great. All those external things that are, that we think make us happy. I want peace. Mm. Going back to your original question about loneliness, we don't fit in, because we come back with a whole new set of values. And most of our values don't coordinate with what we see around the planet. So we kind of find people that kind of listen to us. My times in the hospital were, and 2 years of recovery. And actually, I mentioned earlier about Texas. My most difficult times were living in Texas, having a near-earth experience, because I'm kind of a country boy. And my whole life was simple back then. And so coming back with complications of medical complications, and coming back and not stuttering anymore, and talking about what I saw on the other side, and having a conversation with God, and talking about angels, and then talking about a near-death experience back in the 80s and 90s and 2000, people didn't want to hear it. So I was so anxious to talk about it. I went everywhere. Rabbis, priests, ministers, psychiatrists. There wasn't a person I didn't seek out just to find the answers. And I began to go to the libraries and just start reading and discovering. I didn't know I had a near-earth experience until someone mentioned it to me, that I had a near-earth experience, because she said I had a near-earth experience and I can see an aura all around you. And she knew when I had died, and I listened to her. So that gave me a lead for research, which led me to IONS, which led me to doing so many different lectures, writing a book. If we really are flowing with our life and get into a place of just let the universe drive, and you get in the passenger seat and just enjoy the ride, let them do their job. Think about the planets and Mother Nature and the animal kingdom. Everything is in harmony. We are not. And we're the ones who tend to shovel it all in the wrong area. We're the ones who destroy. We're the ones who are angry. We're the ones who want more. And that's not coming from a place of love and kindness and being in a harmonious state of mind. So I think that you're going back to, for me, I look for people who live a very simple life. And that to me means the world to me. So I spend a lot of times talking to homeless people, immigrants, orphans, those who are less fortunate, because those are the ones to me that really are the angels of this planet, the earth angels of this planet. That's where I spend my time, because they want nothing from me. They want an ear, they want a conversation, and I'm willing to talk. Sometimes just spend my time listening to their stories. And it's just amazing. It really has taught me how to be humble. When so much is taken away, people, I said, they just want a simple life as well. They just want to be at peace and be able to have money and be able to pay their rent and be able to be listened to and be able to have love in their life and relationships. It's very simple. We're all looking for that, but we're always looking out there for something when it's actually right here.
Due to your experience, what are your thoughts on life? Like, do you believe in reincarnation or?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And so we got that. So what do you think is the point of our lives? What is the point of all this reincarnation? What are we doing?
Well, so I kind of look at it this way. So I believe in the theory of reincarnation because when I was on the other side, I got a chance to see my past lives. I didn't believe in reincarnation before, never even thought about reincarnation. It just didn't matter to me. And then when I saw my past lives, I thought, oh my God. An example, I in the 1500s, I was a writer and I was an alcoholic. I spent more time in the bottle and drinking it and destroying my life than completing my life as a writer. And this happened to me twice. So it's funny, in this lifetime, I don't drink. I have no desire for any alcohol, but I have the desire to write. So going back to the theory of reincarnation, we are provided an opportunity to complete something that we did not do in another lifetime or lifetimes ago. So for me, I think that's very important that we find out. I do past life regressions. I'm just fascinated by that. But for me, I think believing in the theory of reincarnation, absolutely, without a doubt. When you see it and you know it and you feel it, and then of course living in California, I mean, there's so many people here who are into this mindset. So it gives you the chance to have other conversation with people who believe in this. But I think my time in Texas, it was a very rigid, conservative, kind of one dogma of thinking, and it wasn't corresponding with what I saw on the other side. So, and I'm don't get me wrong, I love Texas and I think the people are great, but I needed to open my mind up and to discover a lot more. And California provided that for me to be with other people who thought like me.
All right. After speaking to a couple NDEers, they have kind of mentioned to me that there are things about their NDE that they never tell anybody. Is there anything,
yeah, we don't.
Is there anything something that you've had during your NDE you've never shared with anybody that you're willing to share? And if you're not willing to share, it's okay. I will still love you. So
no, I mean, it's almost like, here I go back to my Catholic upbringing. It's like going to confession and you're having that one-on-one powwow with your priest and you're just sharing, I call them human errors of things that you've done. And then he has this, passage of words that allows you to heal within. And it's only for you. I can tell you, I think for many of us, you have to find the right ears to share it with. Because oftentimes I think people, here's a good example. Just doing an interview with you, being from Texas, and I said, I've traveled all around the world. I've been speaking since 2011 and have done so many different radio shows and TV shows. I learned that you only give enough information to those ears that are willing to listen and not judge. Because oftentimes when you're talking about, here a good example, near-death experience, paranormal investigator, well, those two things, side by side are enough to, hi, honey, I'm going to the cemetery tonight. We're working on a case there. Or, hi, honey, I'm going to work on an unsolved murder case here. See you in a couple of days. I mean, those type of relationships are not kind of being the door down to be with you. So it puts you into a place of alone. I don't want to say isolation. I enjoy my peace and my time. But I think going back to your original question, are there things that have happened to me on the side that I keep private? Absolutely. I would share it with someone else who's had a near-death experience, and I have. There's a lady in San Diego. Her near-death experience was quite similar to mine. The mathematical codes. She got a chance to see the future of the planet, where we were going, like I did. She also downloaded quantum physics and what we call the angel codes. Like me, she saw, where we're going from 2020 to 2030. And so I think with her, yes, the only problem that she has is her husband is a deacon of the Baptist church, and she has to sneak a phone call to talk to me because her family, her parents, her husband, her children, they don't believe her. And so I'm her saving grace. And so, I get a call from her and I talk to her, and we'll spend hours on the phone. And it's kind of weird because it's as though, even though she's at home and kind of sheltered and doing nothing, I'm out on the road talking. She brings me back to, she's my ground zero. She makes me appreciate what I did experience on the other side, because it makes me feel good to know that someone else like me saw the codes, saw the prophecies, saw the past lives, saw collective consciousness. Also, like me, had a life review in a stratosphere. Like me, she was in space looking down at Mother Earth and was seeing the planet. And like me, had a zoom lens that could go from country to city to community to small town with a zoom lens and see where we as a collective consciousness weren't shining. And so we've talked about these things, and it's so funny because every time we talk, she kind of brings up something that happened in her near-death experience. Oh my God, it happened to me too. And then we, talk about it. So it's quite fascinating, but for me, it gives me a sense of being, as I said, being grounded, to know that when you've had a near-death experience, and I don't know if people would share this with you, but I will, you do doubt yourself because you hear from so many different people who say to you that didn't happen. And what I find interesting, the medical community doubted me for so many years, and out of nowhere, someone from the Johns Hopkins Medical Institute saw me on a YouTube video and contacted me, and they asked me, to submit a proposal about my near-death experience. It took them many, 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 many months before they accepted it, and I wrote it. And I guess I'm the first non-medical person who wrote something for the Johns Hopkins Medical Journal about a near-death experience. I mean, think about that. Mm-hmm. 40 years ago, I wasn't welcomed by the medical community, and now they're reaching out to me yet again to write another article. So I think things have come full circle, and I think why near-death experiences are so important, Jeff, right now, is I think we're at a time on this planet, we're going to go one or two ways. We're either going to ascend, we're going to evolve, or we're going to descend and revolt. So, and you can kind of see where we were this past year. We were, especially here in America, so close to really losing our country. And so I think what's interesting, think about all the people that showed up. Think about, we didn't know what was going to happen. And then you look about January the 6th. Watching all this, I think for me, I didn't know anything about the 14th Amendment or the 25th Amendment, the Almoyan Act, the Hatch Act. Who cared? But it brought me back to learning about our country, our Constitution, and its values. We the people. And that's what's important. We the people on this planet really can make a difference. But we've got to do some serious homework here because, once again, we could easily go down the wrong track. And I think our angels basically think about this. On January the 6th, how did all this happen? Everyone broke in and it just seemed like God's energy or the angels or what do you want to call it, just guided them down the corridors away from the rioters. It just one wrong turn, one wrong moment, the whole country just could have been in another direction. So something very divine to me took over. And we have been given a chance to really think about values and think about our country and think about our relationships. And the reason why I bring this up, because that's what I learned on the other side. What's important, Peter? What matters, Peter? How can you be of service, Peter? These are the things that mean the most to me. So as I said, I keep it simple. I keep it real. I find people that I can identify with, even if it's just, talking to my indie twin in San Diego and talking to her once in a while. It just brings me back to a basic principle of being grounded and being alive and being of service.
All right, I'm going to shift gears on you here.
Sure.
You do a lot of stuff. So do you have any projects that you're working on right now that you want us to know about?
Oh, gosh, yes. Once again, I've been, Johns Hopkins has reached out to me again to write an article about racism. Now think about that.
Wow.
I'm completing my second book, The Accidental Prophet, which is the sequel to my book, Keymaster. For those who want to reach out to me, my website is www.theaccidentalprophet.com. I've got a lot of radio interviews coming up. Hopefully, if we get the COVID under control, I'm back on airplane and I'll be back on my European book tour. So I'll be going to Denmark, UK, Australia, Canada, and these are all pending. And then I have an IANS conference, I believe, in September that I've submitted a proposal to. And what else? I can't think of anything right now. I've got what's coming up, and I can't even think right now. It's all in my office. But anyway, but quite a bit, quite a bit of radio interviews and travel. I really look forward to traveling again and getting on an airplane and speaking to my crowds. That's important to me, especially the kids that show up.
All right, your book, The Keymaster, can you get it at all the usual places like Amazon, Google Books?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, yeah. The other book that I wrote a short story on is called Miracle Dogs. Amazon and Barnes and Noble. The Accidental Prophet, the sequel to Keymaster, will be out this summer. And then this is the whole part of the European tour. And this book in particular is about my world as a paranormal investigator, traveling around the world, solving crimes, unsolved, paranormal cases, forgotten cases, taking to cemeteries and golf courses and haunted caves. So it's going to be an interesting book. I really look forward to completing this book and getting it out.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I'd like to get you back when you release that book and we can talk about that.
Yeah, as I think I mentioned to you earlier, before we went on air, my near-death experience allowed me to see mathematical codes. Mm-hmm. So when I came back, we didn't have Google, back in the 80s and 90s, late 80s and 90s. So I spent my time in the libraries. Here I was, 89 pounds, and people were making fun of me. I looked like the Elephant Man. I was like this skinny little guy with a staph infection on my face. So I would hide, with my hoodie and go into the library and read. And then I got a phone call. A homicide detective had contacted me and wanted me to work on a case that involved numerology, triple codes, and the supposed victim that was shot was a special effects makeup artist. And I was studying, I was to become a special effects makeup artist. So I think it goes back to that what I said earlier, do your homework. And when it's your moment to step up to the plate, the universe will call you. And that one phone call, I showed up on this case. I didn't know what I was doing. I never worked with homicide detectives before. I never worked on a crime scene, but I knew numbers. I knew that I had a name. I knew I had the name of the first responding officer. I knew I had the name of the man that died. So I could take his birthday. I could take his time of death. I could take the name of the first responding officer. And I could just use math. I could take the name of the address. Everything was math to me. And so that's how I learned to solve cases, was by using numerology. Wow. And so this book, The Accidental Prophet, takes you on a road of how I use mathematical equations to work on paranormal cases.
Wow. I would love that. We don't have time today, obviously, but I would love to hear how you break down all that math and how you come up with these equations to solve that. That'd be really interesting.
Well, one thing I'd like to say, and so many people who've had near-earth experiences, we come back changed. I used to stutter. I had a speech impediment. When I was nervous, and I think you might hear it tonight, I get a little excited and talk, and I don't make sense, so I have to really slow down. But I had a speech impediment for many, many years. And so when I came back, I didn't stutter. So when I came back, all I wanted to do was talk. And what was so sad is no one wanted to listen to me. So as I said, so for me, not only did I learn to speak, but I came back with this zest for life. And I used math and enjoy it. I hated it when I was in school. And now I've studied ancient numerology. I mean, stuff that goes thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, ancient astrology, and I can't get enough. So as I said, so, you look at the time of the death and where the planets were positioned at that time. Again, you look at the birthdays, everything is math. Everything is sound. Everything is math. It's just how we communicate. Everything breaks down to what we hear and what we see.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that actually even math would be the one language that if we came across aliens or whatever, math would be the one unifying language across the universe.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, that's an example when I was working on cases, I'd show up and I was at 1600 something street and I'm looking at my watch. It's 11:11. And I'm working on an example when I was working on a case in Gettysburg. And I'm looking at the address and I'm seeing 11:11 on my watch. It's like kind of like this deja vu of going back into that tunnel. I always knew that I was working on something pretty profound when I would show up. And you look at the address, and 16 is obviously numerology, means something, and 11:11 means something, and you're working on a case. And an example, just you look at when the president and the vice president were sworn in, I always look at everything from a mathematical perspective. What time they were sworn in, what time they start, what time he signs the papers, everything. I look at everything from the perspective of math because it makes sense to me. 1 and 1 equals 2. It does not equal 34. And so once you understand that there is an equation that is simple and everything is based upon mathematical equations, then everything to me is easy from that point on.
Have you ever seen the diagram made by Tesla with the numbers 1 through 0? And how
his favorite number was 333.
Well, I don't know if it was 333, but from what I read and I saw this video about it, I thought everything comes down to 369. But if you ever see it,
it does. We call that
333. Yeah. But maybe it's a different way of saying it.
369. Well, the 369 is creative concord in numerology. 3 is self-expression. 6 is humanity. 9 is being of service. So then you break all that down. So 3 is ruled by Gemini and how we communicate. And it's about downloading information. 6 is the teachers, the doctors, the nurses, the politicians to be of service. It's also the veterinarian. It's the animal kingdom. It's the planet. And 9 basically is the brotherhood of mankind. So those are very ancient numbers, the 369, and they're an extremely. When I see those numbers, I pay attention.
There's a little bit different twist to this, and I won't go in all that, but I'll just tell you about the 369 part is that whenever you double 3, 6, or 9, it always comes back to 3, 6, or 9. For example, 3 and 3 is 6. 6 and 6 is 12, which is 1 and 2 is 3. 6, 6, and 6 is 18, which 1 and 8 is 9. And if you just keep going through that pattern, doubling it always is 3, 6, and 9.
Well, the same thing happens with the number 9.
Yes,
1 and 8
exactly.
is 9. 9 and 9 is 18. 1 and 8 is 9. Everything comes back to 9. 9 is the divine. It always circles around, and that's what's interesting because if you look at where we are right now, when we had Hillary and Trump running in 2015 and 2016, we were in a 9 pinnacle, an 18-9. And if Hillary had won the nod, she would have been impeached. There was impeachment no matter who the president was. 9 always returns to itself. But 9 is also our greatest teacher. And so we're ending that 9 cycle. And now we're going into the age of Aquarius for the next 10 years. And that happens on Valentine's Day. 7 planets are going to be in the house of Aquarius, which means unity, all ethnicities. It's all about music. The last time we had this, not in this equivalence, but close to it, was in 1965, where the age of Aquarius basically was just born. And the reason why people said, well, how do you know that? Well, in 1963 and 64, we had Johnson, and we had the end of the Camelot era. And Doris Day and Rock Hudson were the number one, had the number one movie in America at the time. Doris Day had the number one song of the time. The Singing Nun had the number one song as well. And in 1965, Cher and Janis Joplin jumped onto the scene. Motown, the Bee Gees, the Beatles. In a matter of a year and a half, we went from the Camelot years to everything that was just so extreme to the other side. The pendulum always swings, and we're swinging to a very unusual time for the next 10 years. So I think for me, one of the most important things that we're going to face here is depression. How many people are going to come out of this, and where are they going to be here? Where are they going to be in their heart area? So, so things are going to shift for so many of us. And there are a lot of people, I think, who are not going to do as well as they should. And there's going to be a lot of endings going on. So, and a lot of new beginnings. But in order to be on the right side of history, you have to go to an Aquarius way of thinking, freedom. That's what Aquarius is all about. The age of Aquarius is all about freedom, giving the other person the freedom to choose as they see fit to their own consciousness. And that's where we're going. We've come from that I am presence, that me, myself, and I career, and now we're going to a we consciousness. And that's how it's going to work for all of us, for the most part. And if you can't get into the we consciousness, you're not going to make it.
We'll have to save that for next time and talking about your prophecies.
Sure. Yeah.
Before we go, can you give our guest one last message?
Yeah. I learned on the other side that as long as I have breath, I'm here to contribute to this planet. So for me, I live by a very simple mantra: provide the people, the places, and the situations. And my job is to show up, not in fear, but in faith. And, think about the universe. I go back to what I said earlier. Jade, stop trying to navigate. Let God or the universe or your angels navigate you. Allow them to do their job and sit in that passenger seat and just enjoy the ride and participate and enjoy. Think about when you're on someone else is driving, you're on a road trip and you're just looking out the window. There is nothing greater than that. Well, that's the same thing. Let God drive this time, and just you'll get to where you're supposed to go, and just allow it. Just allow life to give you the very best. Sometimes we don't choose the best outcomes for ourselves. So I think the best thing I can advise to all of you: go inside, find that peace, and then make your decision. When you're at peace, you make the best choices.
Thank you. That was a great message.
Seriously.
All right, Peter. Well, I really appreciate you giving me some of your time today.
Thank you.
I wish
I zigzagged, but I have a lot on my mind.
That's okay.
Yeah.
There's no really exact format on how this is supposed to turn out anyways. But again, I want to say thank you, and I wish you massive success with your books and anything else that you're into.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right, my
friend.
Thank
you, Jeff.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.